Hello and welcome to Listening to the Verde, your source for all information about the Verde River. I'm joined today by Mayor Tim Olinsky, Mayor of the City of Cottonwood, and City Manager Ron Corbin from the City of Cottonwood as well. Thanks for joining me, guys.
My pleasure.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Well, we've got a kind of wide range of questions about the river, what it means to the city, how you guys have had relationships with it over your life. But I thought I'd start with something just really big picture. And that's, Mayor, what does the Verde River mean to the City of Cottonwood in general?
Well, it's really the reason why the City of Cottonwood was founded. So it means everything to the City of Cottonwood. Dating back to, the Sinagua Indians that settled in this valley. We wouldn't be here were it not for the Verde River.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit about your relationship with the river, just in general. When was the first time you came and visited it? What's it like today?
Yeah, that's great. That's a good question. Well, I grew up on the East Verde River, so tributary of the Verde, and I had an aunt that lived here in Cottonwood. So, my earliest memories are driving from Payson to Cottonwood, and she lived real close to the river, so we would go down and visit it. And it's remarkable how different sort of the river culture is today in the whole Verde Valley. At that point, it was definitely a great place to visit, but it was fairly rough, and it was difficult to find access to the river. But now, there's so much going on in Clarkdale to Camp Verde around the river. We've really recognized that it's something that it has a lot of value for recreation, but also tourism, and so it's just been fantastic to see so much focus.
It's funny, I have a similar experience. I used to come up here with my dad fishing at Dead Horse State Park all the time. Some of my earliest memories are doing that. And there were a ton of no river access signs, but you couldn't find a river access sign, anywhere in town. Yeah. Ron, hearing a little bit about what the river means to the city in general, how does that impact how you do things day to day in your job, actually managing and operating the city?
Well, it's always at the on the mind. And so when I was hired almost 3 years ago, one of the priorities of the council was to become more connected with the river. And so you guys were just talking about river access point, and we're always looking for opportunities to increase river access. The community knows there's a river there. It's where all that green stuff is. But there's not a whole lot of places in Cottonwood to connect with the river. So we're always looking for ways to increase that education and connection to the river. So we have the jail trail down there that we work with Dead Horse State Park on, that you can touch the river. And then other than that, there's not a whole lot of places that you can access it. It's either private property or there's no road or no signage. So one of our goals is to increase access. But when it comes to managing the city, it's really just a reminder of the water situation. And so while the river doesn't run robust through our city all the time, given the ditches and the farming and the ranching and different things going on, it's always on our mind. So when we look at developments, when we look at our policies and procedures, it's just always there. So when we look at our strategic plan, outdoor economics is a huge piece of our strategic plan. We believe that it's not something to keep a secret. We believe it's something to share. And so while we're the heart of Arizona wine country, we believe there's a strong connection to the river. So we believe it's a part of our tourism. We believe it's a part of our economic development. And we think it's a part of our quality of life. So part of our motto, our mission statement is to inspire a vibrant community. And that's really about the river. And so we believe that it is important. So it doesn't matter what it is we're doing or thinking about, it's always a piece of the decision-making process. It's always a piece of what is going on.
Well, that's incredible to hear that. It's permeated so completely through the way that you're doing your work. But so you mentioned a couple of the things about the river, not flowing, really coursing through the city of Cottonwood in some areas. What do you guys, and really just your perspective, it doesn't have to be like the perfect scientific answer in the world. What do you see as some of the threats facing the river? And we can talk a little bit about challenges after that.
I think one of the biggest threats facing the river right now is climate change, really. I've noticed over my brief lifetime, a difference in just the flow of both the East Verde, which I drive by frequently, and of course the Verde River as well. And that's, that far and away, I think is the biggest threat facing the river right now. Again, not a scientist, but obviously, people like to point fingers at development, and that's very true. We certainly are very mindful of how many homes are being developed, but more than that, what I really focus on most is per capita use. and making sure that we're as low as we possibly can be on per capita use. So since we bought the private water companies, we've we've pumped I think about 30% less from the aquifer. This is a 20 years now that we've owned the private water companies. So that's a big deal, and that's including all the growth that we've had. So doing everything we can, making sure our house is in order here in Cottonwood on conservation, I think helps alleviate some of those stresses to the river.
I want to follow up on that in a second, just because I think there's a really big disconnect that people assume that growth always means more water use. And sometimes it does, but sometimes if you take conservation measures to come along with it, fix some of those existing infrastructure problems, it doesn't have to. But before we get into that, I want to make sure you have a chance to speak to it too, Ron. What do you see as some of the threats?
Well, I let him go first so that he steals my answers and I don't steal his. The drought. And so, will it last forever? Hopefully not. We've had a great monsoon, but a wet monsoon doesn't fix a drought. We need a couple long wet winters. We need the snowpacks up in the Rockies. And it's not just really about water that gets in the Verde. One of the things that impacts the Verde River, at least downstream, is the growth and the use of water in Phoenix. And as the big lakes dry up and they have less Colorado water, then I believe they will begin to take more from the Verde, or at least attempt to take more from the Verde. So even though we've had a great monsoon season, you can't think of the river microscopically. You have to think of it globally. And if Phoenix needs more water, the Verde is one of their options. And so the more that those big lakes dry up, the more they'll take from the Verde, which impacts us. So I think that is one of the biggest things. And I'll just follow up with education. A lot of people make decisions without being fully educated on the water in the river and the impact. And as the mayor just said, we've grown and we're using less water. So, you can't just say no growth to save the river. That's not going to save the river. If the river needs saving, I'll let others decide that. It's beautiful. We got to think long term, but you don't want to make decisions today that end up having a negative impact in the future. So I think education, getting people aware that green space is a waterway, is a river, and to be thankful. You asked another thing that I think about in addition about how we manage the city storm runoff. We want to keep it. We don't want bad things to get to the river, so we have a very aggressive stormwater protection plan because we don't want things. Where does our stormwater end up? In the Verde. Mm-hmm. And so we want to do everything we can to environmentally protect the area, including the water. So, educating themselves about what they do every day, the citizens, and the impact their water use, their behaviors have on the river is going to be important. The more we know, then we can make educated decisions.
Mm-hmm. And what do you both think about, what are the challenges, keeping us from addressing those threats? What are the roadblocks that are in the way?
Really, I think one of the biggest roadblocks is the amount of newcomers we have coming to the area. So it's really an education process. So we have to kind of onboard all of our new guests that move here to the Verde Valley. That's really important. So I think we've taken a better stance here at the city in the last few years of really making sure that we're building a culture of conservation, if you will. So that when people move here, they kind of can immediately grasp that sense of our community, that we take the environment very seriously, we take a flowing river very seriously. So, that takes a lot of players, it takes a lot of effort, to get the word out, but I think we're making good progress in that way. So really education is critical.
Okay.
Yeah, to add to that, I think resources, finances. So whether it's spending the money on a treatment plant. We have a lot of unincorporated areas that use septic systems that aren't that river friendly. And so, getting federal, state monies to help us address that, to keep our environment and the river clean. Whether it's more money for more education, whether it's more money to do things. I know the Friends have all sorts of projects to help improve the water. Maybe it's to help ranchers and farmers find more innovative ways to use less water. So there's lots of things that I think can be done with the right amount of resources. So I think just getting the state and the feds to understand that we have a need in the Verde Valley that's unique is probably one of our biggest challenges. Often our state legislature, we love them, but they try to solve all the problems with one solution, like a global thing. And I'm not a native of Arizona. I've only been here 21 years.
You got a head start on most Arizonans.
Yeah, but I'm not native. I was not born or raised in the area. I didn't get to jump in the creek when I was a kid. This creek. Now in Arkansas, there are lots of creeks and crawdad fishing and stuff, but we'll save that for another interview. But it's just the Verde needs to be addressed differently than the Colorado, and making sure that our legislatures and elected officials understand that, and that they know that it's going to take creative solutions and money to help fix and address the issues that we have in the area.
And I mean, following up on that a little bit, like, what are some of the things that we need to be spending those resources on?
Well, I think research is one of them. I think we need to make sure we know what we're doing. We hear lots of different things about how much water's under the ground, and everybody's got a different opinion because, according to our information, there's lots of water under the ground, and we're recharging it on a regular basis, and we're using less than we used to. So I think spending that money to really figure it out and then educate the folks. River cleanup, some of the work that you guys do, I think would be important. And then money for conversion of septic systems. It's going to take a lot of money to do some of those unincorporated areas, but I think it's money well spent at some point by the states or the feds to convert those septic tanks into treated plants.
Yeah, and I think that would go a long way because we recapture all the water that we deliver, except to the villages.
Right.
We can't recapture any of that water. It's all septic tanks, and we recapture it, we reuse it, and then we recharge it. That's a huge deal.
Right.
Absolutely. And septic tanks can work great if you maintain them, if you keep them going. But how many people are maintaining their septic tanks on a regular basis? Right. When was the last time any of us, who have septic tanks, went out and actually did a septic tank inspection? And if you haven't done that, how do you know how well your septic tank is working? Right. Well, thank you for that, guys. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about the city itself and some of the specific actions you guys can see moving forward. Okay. But we have to take a quick break, and so we'll see you on the other side. Thanks.
Great.
And welcome back to Listening to the Verde, your source of information for everything you need to know about the Verde River. I'm joined today by Mayor Tim Olinsky from the city of Cottonwood and by city manager Ron Corbin. It's been a long day. I did have a question first right for you off the bat, Ron.
Yes.
You've been kind enough to help us with this idea of river-friendly certification. Right. I've drugged you to a lot of meetings and asked your opinion about this a lot of times. But I was wondering, just your gut reaction as a city, what are the things that a city can do that make it river friendly?
Use less water, I think, is the first thing. I think having a good stormwater protection plan, I think, is important. I think doing things like we recharge water and doing those kinds of things. I think educating the public is a big deal and supporting those people doing the work. So when we are looking at updating our riverfront park right there near the riverfront park, finding ways to integrate with the river, with Dead Horse State Park, so that we're providing opportunities for education, so that we're providing opportunities to do different things. I think working with our state legislatures to make sure they're not doing things that would be adverse to the Verde River. So I think there's a lot of little things. Construction. So we manage construction. We require all on-site water to be reclaimed water versus taking it from the aquifer. We make sure that they put up storm protection things so it's not a lot of runoff when we have normal rainfall. So it's those little things that I think add up significantly to providing for a better river.
You've mentioned education a couple of times here in the conversation. This is maybe a little bit too detailed of a question, but like, how do we do that?
No, I think it's fair. So the city council authorizes us to sponsor an elementary school education program. The mayor probably can talk more about it than I can, but we've been doing it for years.
Oh, years and years.
And we pay for that. And so we have Erin, I think's her name.
Erin Cody.
Yeah, she goes out into all the schools. We help fund that. And so, that's the kind of stuff that happens. I think the things that the Friends do, the Verde Days, the Bird Festival, all of those things add to educating people about this wonderful natural resource we have.
Mayor Alinsky, just not to put you too much on the spot here, but you've been kind enough to let us take a look at your home for one of our very first river-friendly certifications. And for those of you who aren't aware, the way this program is working is we've thought that if we can set some standards that help people understand whether they're a homeowner or a business owner or a municipal staff person, what are the sets of things that you need to do to make sure that you're doing your part to protect the river. If we can give people that information, they're going to act on it, they're going to do the right thing, and we're going to see behaviors start to change. Again, you've been kind enough to let us take a look at your home. Can you tell me a little bit, what was that process like? Why did you think it was a worthwhile thing to do?
Well, I think anybody would find value in it. I mean, I think anyone who's visited the Verde River or has caught a glimpse of it would want to protect that river. It's a beautiful resource that we have here. So I think anybody would jump at the opportunity. It was great. It was seamless. You guys are very thorough when you came out. Nobody got hurt on my property, which is always a plus.
Always good.
No, it was, and I mean, certainly there's that feel-good element to it as well. But I think that everybody should go through that process.
Great.
Yeah.
And so, zooming out a little bit here, since we've talked about some of the more details, what do you guys see as those core parts of solutions? We've talked about river-friendly stuff for cities. We've talked about what you've done at your home to be a little bit more river-friendly. If you could pick just one or two things from each of your perspectives, whether you want to answer as just a resident or as in your positions as a representative of the city, what are those top couple of things we need to do?
I think that we need to make decisions that are based on education, based on science, that allow us to grow in a smart way. A lot of people don't like growth or subdivisions, those kind of things, but I would take a small subdivision over a bunch of 2-acre mansions with green lawns. We're going to use a lot less water. So I think that a balanced, educated response to growth is going to be super important for our community. That's probably my number one thing is that, because we've got people who don't want any growth, and the first thing they say is it's water or the river, and that's really not the issue. It's making sure that we can grow in a way that respects the river and respects the water.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, community vision, I think, would be really helpful so that we all kind of have a shared vision of what our conservation efforts look like around the river. And I think, again, we do a really good job here in the Valley. We work really well together. There's the Verde Front organization. It's a collaborative, group of folks that land management agencies. Every city and town is represented there.
Every person who would like to come.
Yeah, anybody. Basically, the movers and shakers are all there. And then they have all the subcommittees.
And then a few others.
And then exactly. Some of the miscreants show up once in a while. But it's again that collective group, collective impact. We all have that shared vision with the Verde Front. I think getting that vision out to the community, so when folks move to the area, they recognize what that vision is and they adhere to it, and frankly, they're drawn to it, which is what we're really trying to do with our development communities. Make sure that that they're doing developments in a way that is good for the environment, as less impact on our natural resources as possible. And then that's really a marketing tool that they have to make sure they're marketing to the folks that we really want to move to our area. We know we're going to grow. Who are we going to attract to this community? That's really the important thing. Are we going to attract folks from Palm Desert who thinks that water just bubbles out of the desert mysteriously and they want swimming pools and this, that, and the other? Or do we want to attract folks that came out here for the Bird and Nature Festival and want to preserve that here in our community?
Yeah, and I think it raises some really important and challenging questions, right? Like, if we're going to see all this growth happen, how do we continue to maintain like affordable housing for the people who are already here? That's something we hear about all the time. I did want to ask a couple of questions here as we wrap up, but before we get into those, just something that came to mind while you guys were speaking. We have a lot of different municipalities here. We've got the county. How do you guys all talk to each other and plan together? Because it seems like, you could make Cottonwood the perfect place on earth and still screw up the river a lot if some of the other surrounding areas didn't play along.
Mm-hmm. We have regular meetings. We really do. I think pre-COVID we would all meet in person, obviously, and we would have intergovernmental meetings. We'd have mayor-manager meetings, and where both sides of the county would come together, both over the mountain, the Prescott side and the Verde Valley side. That's the in-person meetings have tapered off, but there's still plenty of virtual meetings that we can attend, and we're talking now about trying to get us back in person because it is hard to really make those connections virtually. But yeah, it happens. It happens frequently.
It does. So the one thing to remember, though, is we all have different priorities. And so we're not Camp Verde or Clarkdale. We're not the county. And unincorporated areas don't want to be Cottonwood, and we're okay with that. So we've got to learn to respect the differences. And I think engaging with people like the Friends under the Friendly Living certification processes, whether it's subdivision housing or municipalities, I think supporting globally those kinds of programs so that we approach it from a different angle. Rural area, Arizona wants to say rural. The unincorporated areas don't want to be a part of a city. They like the rural lifestyle, and that's fine. But they still need to try to do things that help the river. So we're going to try to do the same in ours. It's just going to look different. So we continue to talk to each other, whether at meetings or otherwise. We have great volunteer groups like the Verde Front, the Friends, Nature Conservancy, all of those people working in the Verde Valley that I think help keep the elected officials and the leaders engaged. And I think that's probably part of it, is making sure that we have people like the nonprofits to keep the electeds and leaders accountable.
Well, if you guys ever need more meetings, we can always set up more meetings for you guys.
No, thank you. Max, real quick, the other thing I wanted to add is you talked about what the city is doing. The other thing is our long-term plan is connecting them to the river more. So we hopefully, before I resign someday or get kicked out or whatever the council does with me, we want to create a great connection, river access point here in the city of Cottonwood. Very important to our council. And so and all of our developments require trails and outdoor activities. So we're going to continue. You ask how we're going to educate, how we're going to get things done. We're going to do it by requiring it as part of growth and as part of development. And when we talk about our future park systems and our outdoor activities, it's going to include the river. And keeping it at the top of our to-do list is going to be how we're going to make sure it happens.
Well, just a couple more questions here as we wrap up, one for each of you.
Okay.
Ron, I want you to imagine it's 2030. You've been wildly successful. Okay. Everything that you wanted to get done is done. What does Cottonwood look like, and how does that relate to the river?
Well, it's 7-8 years away. I appreciate that you think I'll be here that long. That actually gives me hope.
You better be.
So the good news to me is that I think that we have a balanced community. So by that time, we'll have a river access point. I think we will have our injection wells injecting water back into the aquifer up and running. I think that we'll have as many houses possible on our treatment facility, on our systems. I think that we'll have more outdoor activities. I think we'll have a better connection. There is the Arizona Trail System that they're putting together. Hopefully that'll be complete. Hopefully we'll have more outdoor activities like that. So I think it's a real balanced approach where we are going to be a little bit bigger. We're going to have a little bit more tourism, but I'm hoping that we're more connected, that we have more opportunities. So part of the reason cities invest in parks and recreation and the library and those kinds of things is to create opportunities for people to connect. And when people connect, connect, they're friendlier, they're nicer to each other, they communicate. So we want more parks, we want more river, we want more trails, we want more ways for people to interact with each other. So that's my vision. It's not really about what it looks like, it's about how it feels. Council's top priority the last day of our last strategic plan was that we keep our small town feel. And so if I'm able to do that in 2030, that we're still a small town with a flowing river and a vibrant community, then I will have been successful.
Great. And kind of the flip side of that question, Mayor Linsky, let's say it's 2030, not that far off, and we haven't been successful. The river's not flowing continuously throughout the year, especially here through Cottonwood. What would that mean to you? And we'll just leave it there.
Yeah, and it's a terrible vision, to
yeah,
imagine
it really
that
is.
happening.
Don't put it in the universe.
Yeah. No, and I've visited other communities where San Pedro once flowed, or and you see that hollowness in the city or the community, where there's just a sandy wash at this point, and that's we're not going to let that happen here. We've got too many people with too much passion to allow that to happen. It would be a catastrophic thing to occur. So from our part, we're doing everything we can to make sure we're pumping less. We're recharging as much as we possibly can. So, we're just simply not going to let that happen. Yeah.
Right.
We're not, and I don't want to end on that bleak note of despair. I want to say that when Ron, before he was officially working for the city, he came up and was house hunting with his wife. We had breakfast, and I told Ron then two very important things. I said the Verde River is paramount here, and second, we all work together. And Ron has really he heard it that first day, and then he's followed through with that. And we really do have so many very unique, wonderful things here in the Verde Valley, and definitely the river's foremost. But our shared vision, our ability to work together, whereas many other communities, there's turf wars, they quarrel, they try to one-up one another. We just simply don't do that. Though we have different visions for our community, we're very separate and distinct. We do work very well together. We are very respectful, and Ron has followed through with all of that. So,
well, that's something that I've definitely noticed working with you both in the ways that we have. That I think it's something that people in our community maybe take for granted, that everybody just plays nice together, that we can recognize and respect the differences that we have. That, again, as you said, Ron, Cottonwood is not Camp Verde, it's not Clarkdale, it's not Sedona, it's not the unincorporated areas. But it's very easy for all of us to take for granted the fact that we have been able to work in a mutually supportive way, in a way that is respectful, and that so far have been successful in maintaining this river, really the last free-flowing alive river in the Southwest. Well, thank you both for joining us here today. I really do appreciate you making the time to have your busy schedules. This has been Listening to the Verde, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Listening to the Verde is brought to you by Friends of the Verde River. Please visit verderiver.org/listening for more videos and resources.